that. So what we're doing, I'm Seth. I think I know most of you. Not, I can meet you later. We're Skyping this out to Bellevue's got about 10 people. Everett's got about 10. Tacoma's got about 10. And then there's some Eastern Washington guys on it as well. So try to bang out as many as we can. So they're kind of doing the same thing. They have a sheet just like, they actually have the same sheet that you guys do. It's a proctor sheet. One person in each office is designated as the proctor. They make sure everybody's in the room, seated, somewhat paying attention. And just,
Is there another one?
Yeah, back in the corner. And is there for the whole thing. So that makes it fairly legal to do that. So what we're going to do, this class, when I built it, you take updates. So this is a code update class. So you just, like, I bought a book that is, it's just updates to from the 2014 NEC to the 2017 NEC. And I just went through and picked out those updates. I submitted them to the state, and then for the outline, they want to know, how are you justifying 4 hours of class? So this is based on 5 minutes a slide. And I doubt we're going to spend 5 minutes a slide. So what I'm guessing is we'll probably be out of here. We're not going to spend 5 minutes a slide. But what we can do, because I am not the electrical master, there's probably several in here that know a lot more than I do about electrical. If there's questions, throw them out there. Same with the Skype guys. We can hear you through the speakers, and hopefully you can hear us. Throw the questions out there, and we'll go through it. I have that book that I can pull up on here, so if there's questions, we can figure that out. Before I go any further with the NEC, there was a couple people asked me leading up to this. They wanted to know if we were going to talk about licenses, as far as like what an 06A, what an 07, what an 01 can do. That's not this class, because those are all Washington licenses. But I do think it's a decent subject to cover. And it'd only take a few minutes, so I thought what I did was I threw pieces from the Hvac class. The Hvac is the Washington Administrative Code. So there's like, just for you that don't know, there's the NFPA 70. That's what we call the NEC. Washington State adopts this, and they say, yes, we're going to abide by these rules, but we're going to make some changes. And that's where the Hvac and the RCW come in. They make some changes to the NEC. So this isn't that class, but we do have that class. It was approved yesterday. So the 2017 Hvac class, we have it. I just haven't scheduled it yet. So if you need those hours, we'll get them to you. We can do it in December, or we can do it in January. If anybody really needs the hours soon, we can get it scheduled. Just let me know, and we will. But what I wanted to do, since we're starting on time, I was just going to run through the 3 main licenses that we have, at least as far as I know. So, like, just in case you're not aware, for Washington State, there's what's called an 01, and you guys are probably 01s. 01s say that you can basically do anything you want, plus some plumbing, which is pretty cool. So you can hook up some water lines to a water heater. It kind of lines out a little bit of in the Hvac and the RCW what it is you can do, but an 01 can do anything with no restrictions, plus they can do some plumbing. So that's pretty cool. If you have an opportunity to get an 01, it'd be worth it, but it's a lot of hours. Probably the most common license that as HVAC techs, we have an 06A. And I thought this would be good to kind of line out, because there's a lot of discrepancies on what an 06A can do. And I think because of that, there's a lot of guys that don't go out and get a better license than an 06A. And so it'd be good to know exactly what your scope of work is under that. An 06A can replace like in kind. There's no requirement as far as limitation on voltages or amperages. I mean, it has to be under 600 volts, but like in kind, that's your limitation. So within the box, that's what an 06A can do. You can install, repair, replace, and maintain line voltage as long as it's inside that box, inside the air conditioner. You can replace any of the internal components as long as it's within the unit and it's not outside. So that's kind of what your 06A allows you to do. You can run short sections of conduit, but that's only for protection of low voltage. That's not like a line voltage circuit. That's just protection of low voltage. So that's within the 06A scope. And you can replace line voltage whips as long as they're 6 feet or under. So just so you guys know that. I'd like to see, and I think most managers would like to see everybody have an 07 in addition to the 06A. They're a nice combination. It'd be even better if the state would combine it and make an HVAC license rather than having the two. But if you ever thought about getting it, it's a good combination to have. 06B, I didn't talk about it. I put it in there. It is a different scope. Some guys have it in residential world. If you have an 06B, you can put 2,000 hours. Speaking of 06B, well, there's an 06B right there.
Nice to meet everyone on 06B.
06B? If you have an 06B, you can put 2,000 hours of that license towards an 06A. So you're halfway there. It takes 4,000 hours to get an 06A. So there are a few people out there. Joe, if you want to eat, you can eat. So what an 06A can't do, so 06A cannot work on line voltage controllers or disconnects outside the box. So disconnects, breakers, motor starters, stuff like that. Heat cables, baseboard heaters. You can work on a disconnect, like on a condensing unit, as long as it's line of sight. You can replace it and maintain it, but you can't install it. So that's where the 07 kind of comes in, because with an 07 you can't install that new stuff, but you can maintain it. So that's where your breakers and your motor starters and stuff like that come in. So that's kind of how those things complement each other. So long story short, I'd recommend everybody get an 07 that currently has an 06A.
So you can replace.
You can replace with an 07. You can replace line voltage outside the box. 06A you cannot.
Okay.
The only line voltage component you can do with an 06A is the whip, and you can maintain that disconnect that the whip's attached to if it's within line of sight of the condensing unit or that piece of equipment.
And under 6 feet.
And under 6 feet. Yeah. Exactly. Where 07 it opens up what you can work on. So they're a nice complement to each other. Any questions on those? All right. So what we're going to do for the NEC update, I printed out like 15 of the copies of the slideshow. We also have it digitally. So if you guys want to watch it, like follow along or take notes of the slides, you got two options. You can either take a hard copy and you can thumb through it and make notes on it, or I'll show you in a second how to put it on your iPad, and then you can just follow along with that. So it's up to you guys. Not everybody likes paper, which I understand because you have to carry it. Looks like you guys like paper, so hand those out. Does anybody else want paper?
I'll take one.
Youngest guy in the room wants paper.
He's over there.
And I think I need a refresher on swimming bases.
Anybody else? We got a few left here. Oh shit. You know what? That was part 2. Which is fine because I had to do this again anyways. So we're just one step ahead. This is a left-handed copy. Are you left-handed?
Yeah. So actually what ends up happening is the installers
So you could.
But we want to do it on our iPad, should I run and get it? If you want. Anybody else?
Well, there's a lot to read on here. I thought there was gonna be a lot more pictures.
You thought there was gonna be more pictures?
I would have assumed.
So
You've been hard flashed.
for you technical guys, there's a QR code. You can scan that with your iPhone or your iPad from there, and you can pull it up. Or the other way you can do it, here's a sheet here. If you want to scan it with your phone, that'll take you directly to the Dropbox. You have to have a QR scanner on your iPhone or your iPad, but it's a free download. Matt's looking at me like, what is a QR code? Oh, I know, I don't want it. I know you don't. So that's an option for the techie guys out there. The other option is, because I'm full of options for you, if you know where the service Dropbox is, within Dropbox, the Service University, it lives in the manuals folder. So both classes are in the service Dropbox, as well as off of that QR code. And I can show you where that is if you want to see it. And this is good for everybody to know where all this stuff lives, because these are things that you have access to. So this is going to look a little bit different than on your iPads.
It's tripping me out, man.
It's because it's Skype. It makes you take just a little bit longer. But there we go. So you probably recognize this. This is Service University. This is within the McDonnell Miller Dropbox. If you go into Service University, there's a file here called Manuals and Electrical Code Books. If you guys go into Electrical Code Books, there's the 2017 NEC. And you guys have access to the full NEC, which is this and or this, but in PDF format. If anybody wants to use these or go through it while we're talking tonight, you're welcome to look through these.
So I don't have to drop $100 every 3 years anymore.
Yeah. That's up to you. But you can go into this Dropbox and you can download that. If you don't know how to get in there, I can show you. I want to make sure everybody knows they have access to that, because electronic version of the code book is really handy. Did you find it? Boy, that is tedious right there, trying to get that thing to line up. There we go. Same thing with those QR codes. There's one here for the NEC as well. So if you wanted to do that, you could scan it. Let's see. Let me find my mouse here. Did anybody try scanning it from out there? I know you guys found a scanner. No?
You gotta have a scanner app, right?
Yeah, it's a free download. It's super easy. So I've had some guys scan these. If it works, you can scan it from there. It takes you right to the Dropbox, then you can download it. So that's an option. All right, you guys ready? Okay. So we're just gonna go through this. If you guys got any questions, say something. We'll stop. We can talk about it. We can look it up. We can do whatever you want. If not, I'm just gonna kind of read through them, and we're just gonna push on until we get to the end, and then take the test. So starting with code-wide changes, definitions, relocated to Article 100. If you don't know, Article 100 is where definitions live. Those taking the test might want to know that information. Article 100, that's the definition section. So they used to be different terms scattered throughout the NEC. They've relocated everything. They've brought it all into Article 100, and that's where you find definitions now. They're trying to make it easier. Things like coaxial cable used to be in 820, it's now in 100. They've just consolidated. So they're getting smarter about the way that they're doing things. Limited access working spaces are now in Article 110. Prescriptive requirements for equipment installed in those spaces has been lacking. This limited access provision is an attempt to provide relief for both the installer and the maintainer and the enforcement community. Since it's located in Article 110, the provision will have an impact on electrical equipment across the code because it kind of branches out from 110 to the rest of the code book. Just helps clarify the definition of limited access spaces. If you want to know more about those, you can look in Article 110 and find out all you want. A lot of voltage systems are going up. They're exceeding the 600 volts now. A lot of that has to do with DC. So photovoltaic, wind, solar, a lot of that DC stuff that they're going to. So NEC is continuing to migrate to a 1,000 volt threshold. So if you've been wondering why they haven't been in the past, they're working on it now. Requirement for available short circuit documentation was added. You've probably seen those on control panels, industrial motor panels, switchboards, short circuit ratings now along with arc flash requirements for what type category of gear. They're branching more and more. Arc flash, of course, as we all know, is a big thing, and so is short circuit ratings. So now they're making that more and more available on nameplates. Article 425, fixed resistance and electrode industrial process heating equipment. That might be a Bill Keegley and Scott Gideon thing, possibly. That's a mouthful. In previous editions, the NEC didn't adequately address requirements for industrial process heating equipment. So they added Article 422, 425. They added Article 425 just for this. So now you guys have your own article for fixed resistance and electrode industrial process heating equipment. It'll help to apply to things such as boilers, electrode boilers, duct heaters, strip heaters, immersion heaters, process air heaters, and other approved fixed electric equipment. So Article 425, remember that if you're working on any electric process heating equipment. It will not apply to room and room air conditioning equipment for personal spaces. That's still going to be 424. So it's just process heating. Article 691, that's a new code, new section. Large scale photovoltaic. As we all know, photovoltaic stations are becoming more and more popular. So the code book is always it's a living piece. So they're always trying to update and grasp the new stuff. So photovoltaic has been added. They're now up to 50 megawatts. That's what it is that they're concerned with. So that's a pretty big jump. They added Article 706, energy storage systems. That's kind of a big thing now. We've all heard about like batteries. So you harness the sun energy or the wind energy during the day, and then you store it at night. So Article 706, that addresses all of your storage systems. Does anybody ever work on any like large voltage storage equipment in here? No? Joe? Nothing?
Not in my center.
Not yet? 710, standalone systems. They've added that. Covers electric power production sources operating in standalone mode. Standalone systems are defined as a microgrid that operates independently of a primary power source. So this is going to be like if you have a house that you put panels on. I think they call it islanding. When you put panels on your house and you cut ties to a meter, you can actually act independently of the grid. But I think there's ways that you can still feed power back through when the current is right. So now they have Article 710 to help address those needs. So that's kind of a new thing. I know one of our guys that used to work here, Eric Ringstad, he did the panels, but he couldn't island. He couldn't, if the power went out to the grid, he couldn't supply his own because he didn't have any batteries and they didn't allow it. But now with these new articles, maybe that's a possibility. Maybe we'll start seeing more of that so you can store your own power and feed it back when the time is right, but still have lights when the power goes out. That'd be pretty cool. It's Article 712, direct current microgrids. So microgrid is same thing as the last one, power distribution consisting of more than one interconnected DC power source, supplying DC to DC converters, DC loads, DC AC. They allow direct utilization of power from DC sources to DC loads such as LEDs, communications equipment, computers. So probably like UPSs is what that sounds like. So they've added an article for that because we're seeing a lot more DC out there. Think about like your DC motors that you're seeing in air handling systems versus your standard PSC motors. Everything's kind of DC now. They've changed up the code arrangement. It used to be we had Articles 5 through 7 were kind of special off on their own. They now may modify or supplement these other chapters. So when you look at the NEC, the way it's broken down, you know, there's general wiring methods, equipment. They have these these extras off to the side now, 5, 6, and 7 that can modify. So if you're doing a project, be sure to check those for special circumstances because they may overwrite rules in the main code book. There's so many different systems out there now, they have to have special sections that can overwrite. Kind of like the Hvac can overwrite the NEC in Washington. Article 100 definitions, they had a revision. Change at a glance, the use of a key is not considered taking an action such as the use of a tool to gain radi access. Crawling under something is not considered radially accessible. This came about because they said there was, like with a breaker panel, you have to have radially access to that. But there were some enforcers saying that a key doesn't provide radially accessible to the panel, when in fact it is. I mean, a key is not really a tool, so they just clarified that. So a key is not a tool. Having something locked is still radially accessible, but you can't crawl underneath like a beam or something. So like here's a picture of that, in case you didn't know what a key looked like. There's your key. Kind of helps clear that up a little bit, doesn't it? Yeah.
You know what really set that off is a keychain.
Keychain.
Yeah.
Well, I'll make a note of that. Thank you, Jimmy. Thank you. Definitions, they changed associated apparatus. They relocated the definition. They relocated it to Article 100. So that kind of comes back to that in the beginning we were talking about how they relocated a lot of definitions. They relocated associated apparatus to Article 100. They revised the definition of a building or a structure. So the definitions for building and structure revised to align with the current building code terms. So now a building is a structure that stands alone, or that is, you can see they marked off the cut off part, that is separated from adjoining structures by firewalls. So that's what makes a different building. If there's a firewall, they're calling it a different building. Does that pertain to anybody? Not so much. Any questions on that? Can you read it, Bill? A little bit. Coaxial cable. This came up earlier. They relocated the definition of coaxial cable. The definition for coaxial cable was relocated to Article 100. And it is a cylindrical assembly composed of a conductor centered inside a metallic tube or shield, separated by a dielectric material and usually covered by an insulating jacket. Field evaluation body and field label. This is a new definition. It's two new definitions pertaining to field evaluations of electrical equipment. They were added to Article 100. Field evaluation body is an organization or part of an organization that performs field evaluations of electrical or other equipment. And field label is applied to evaluated products, equipment or materials to which has been attached a label, symbol, or other identifying mark of an FEB, indicating the equipment or materials were evaluated and found to comply with requirements and described in an accompanying field evaluation report. So like maybe UL rating, or what's the Canadian equivalent? Is that CA, something like that? Yeah. There's a field evaluator right there. She's evaluating a panel.
Where's your arc flash? I was just gonna say, your arc flash.
Oh, I'm sure it's not energized, right? That's gotta be what it is. Or it's,
She's got that screwdriver.
she's got that screwdriver. These are kind of new. These are a new type of a luminaire receptacle for attaching lights to. They've revised the definition of receptacle. So now the definition is it's recognizing mating devices used to install luminaires and ceiling suspended paddle fans. Used to just be like, basically that was a receptacle, but now they have these mating devices for fans and lights. They just kind of stick together. They can rotate a little bit. Makes it easier to plug things in, replace parts. Examination, identification, installation, and use of equipment. This is a new definition. It's a new I note was added indicating equipment may be new, reconditioned, refurbished, or manufactured. So now if you buy equipment,
Say reconditioned.
yeah, it's got to say if it's been reconditioned. So if you're buying, I guess maybe that's a thing, is buying reconditioned panel boards or breaker assemblies. Maybe if it but maybe if you had an old building, you needed something to match.
Right.
So now it has to, the manufacturer, whoever refurbishes it, has to indicate that this thing has been refurbished.
What about motors?
I don't know. Let's read it. Doesn't say motors. But we'll see. We'll see if there's something coming up.
Article 100.
Maybe we'll get to it. Let's see. See where this takes us. We have a new definition for electrical connections. New requirements were added for the use of, tightening torque tools, where torquing is indicated. So where a tightening torque is indicated as a numeric value on equipment or in installation instructions provided by the manufacturer, a calibrated torque tool shall be used to achieve the indicated torque value, unless the equipment manufacturer has provided installation instructions for an alternative method achieving the required torque. So this, imagining some kind of a bus bar of some kind where you have to torque down bolts. Now there's a requirement to actually use the tools that are called out for. I don't know how they enforce it, but at least now they're starting to address it, that you have to have these tools if you're doing that work.
Our control panels have torque spec in it, so.
You have the proper tools?
Yep.
Okay, so we're up
But
to,
I'm saying if we provide them to another contractor, they have to use a torque screwdriver or a torque wrench
okay,
in it. So,
yeah. So it sounds like this has probably been around for a while, but they haven't really addressed it as
Right.
far as saying that you need to have these tools. And now they are. So that's good. Arc flash hazard warning. So this is another one of those labels like we were talking about where they're addressing that. You see this on panel boards, motor control centers, some larger air conditioning equipment. They'll go through and rate this as far as what type of arc flash you need, what the calorie content is as far as what the potential is, so you can calculate your arc flash needs. So this is for non-dwelling unit service equipment rated 1200 amps or more. It's required to be labeled with the normal system voltage, available fault current, clearing times, and date the label was applied. So that's non-dwelling, so no apartments, no houses, no condos, but industrial, commercial, that's where all that's going to apply. And arc flash hazard warning in other than dwelling units, so that's basically what we just said. In addition to the requirements in A, a permanent label shall be field or factory applied to service equipment rated 1200 amps or more. Pretty good size stuff. Marking, equipment markings, type of change, new. New rules provide traceability and other additional information to manufacturers, owners, installers, and authorities having jurisdiction related to reconditioned equipment. So this might have to do with what you were asking there, Josh. Reconditioned equipment shall be marked with the name, trademark, or other descriptive marking by which the organization responsible for reconditioning the electrical equipment can be identified, along with the date of the reconditioning. So that doesn't say specifically what, but I could see that applying to motors. So look for those coming. We have a new definition in spaces about electrical equipment, working space. New requirements were added concerning working space for equipment located in a space with limited access, so above ceilings, crawl spaces, etc. This is probably something some of the installers need to read, and the engineers that spec out where things are put. Working space for equipment operating at 600, oh, they added, so 600, now 1,000 volts nominal or less to ground and likely to require examination, adjustment, servicing, or maintenance while energized, shall comply with the dimensions in 110.26a and some others there. Looks like where equipment operating 1,000 volts nominal or less to ground and likely to require, so there's a list of stuff here. Where equipment is installed above a lay and ceiling, there should be an opening not smaller than 22 by 22, or in a crawl space, there should be an accessible opening not smaller than 22 by 30. So that'd be kind of nice. Hard lids, stuff like that. They'd shove duct heaters. So now there's a requirement for that. So if you go on any jobs and you find that there's not adequate access, you don't have a 22 by 22 in that hard lid, there's the code to cite.
You just cut yourself a hole.
Or better yet, you have them cut it. They didn't do it. So it's a good one to keep in mind right there. Inspections and tests. New requirements were added for the performance and reporting of energizing testing of electrical equipment rated over 1,000 volts. So if you have stuff that's over 1,000 volts, they want it tested before you put power to it. Sounds like a good idea. Where required elsewhere in the code, the complete electrical system design, including settings for protective switching and control circuits, shall be prepared in advance and made available on request to the AHJ, and shall be tested when first installed on site.
Is anybody in our company doing anything with 1,000 volt power?
We'll have to ask the Sparkies. You guys do anything over 1,000 volts?
Yep. All the time.
All the time. So
We
yeah.
just did, I can't remember how many amp service it was at Highline. It's all 15.
Oh, is it?
Yeah.
Okay.
15 kV, or 15 kV.
Oh, it's a feeder main?
Yeah.
Okay.
That's impressive.
So
15.
we can go up to 30,000 volts.
All right. I like it. Ground fault circuit interrupter, so GFI. Protection for personnel, they revised this. GFI requirement for receptacles at commercial industrial applications have been expanded to recognize ground faults other than 15 and 20 amp. If you've been following codes in the last few years, GFIs are almost required everywhere now. Used to just be in bathrooms, you know, we're used to seeing that where the places that there's water. Now it's damn near anywhere. And now they're expanding above your standard 15 and 20 amp as well. So instead of just your normal wall outlets, they're increasing that to probably welding gear and everything else that could shock somebody. So this says GFI protection shall be provided as required in 210.A. Needs to be installed in a radially accessible location. So everybody know what we're talking about, the little GFIs with the reset and the test button, stuff like that. Those have to be installed in a radially accessible location. And for the purposes of this section, when determining distance from receptacles, the distance shall be measured as the shortest path the cord of an appliance connected to the receptacle would follow, without piercing a floor, wall, ceiling, or fixed barrier or passing through a door, doorway, or window. Other than dwelling units, Looks like they scratched out the 125, the 15, and the 20 amp. So now single phase rated 150 volt to ground or less, 50 amp or less, and 3-phase receptacles rated 150 volts to ground or less, 100 amp or less installed in the location specified in 210.8 shall have ground fault circuit interrupter protection for personnel. That's a pretty big swath of equipment right there, including 3-phase. So that's a big one. That's a lot of requirements for GFIs. New GFI protection for receptacles and non-dwelling unit crawl spaces has been added. Ground fault circuit interrupter protection for personnel shall be provided in 210.A. The ground fault circuit shall be installed in a really accessible location. So it looks like you need it in the crawl spaces of buildings now. Yep. Used to not, now you do. That makes sense. Probably wet down there. Be good to have some protection so you don't get shocked laying underneath the building. More ground fault. Ground fault has been added for receptacles installed in non-dwelling unit unfinished basements. So now if you have a basement, even if it's not unfinished in a non-dwelling unit, you have to have GFI protection in that. So all single phase receptacles, 150 volts to ground, 50 amps or less, and 3-phase. So kind of that same list. Now you need it in non-dwelling unit unfinished basements. New GFI protection for lighting outlets and crawl spaces has been added. So this looks like this is probably for dwelling units. So now GFI protection shall be provided for lighting outlets not exceeding 120 volts, so even your lights. So if you have a light down in a crawl space, it needs to be protected by a GFI. So if it gets contact with earth or you get caught between changing the light bulb and the ground, you don't get shocked and your wife find you down there or something. Pretty much if you're replacing outlets, you should probably put a GFI in there. That's what it sounds like to me. Garage branch circuits, new requirements added for minimum rated 120 volt, 20 amp branch circuits for dwelling unit garage receptacles. So this applies to our houses. Branch circuits for lighting and appliances, including motor operated appliance, shall be provided to supply the loads calculated in accordance with 220.10. Branch circuits shall be provided for specific loads not covered in 220.10. So it says, looks like our change is, in addition to the number of branch circuits required by other parts of the section, at least 120 volt, 20 amp branch circuit shall be installed to supply receptacle outlets in attached garages and detached garages with electric power. This circuit shall have no other outlets. So if you're building a house, that'd be good to know. Looks like there's a picture here. Typical garage. So you should have at least one 20 amp, 120 volt outlet, dedicated circuit for your garage.
Showing it on the picture there, it looks like it's
Looks like there is an exception to supply outdoor receptacle off of that garage. Any questions on that? Pretty straightforward. More power. You want more power out there anyways. Arc fault. Anybody dealt with arc fault protection? I've just gone through this, doing a kitchen remodel. Anybody else have any nuisance trips with these arc fault things? They're a pain in the ass.
Yes, they are.
Yeah.
the breakers themselves.
They make all kinds of money on it.
I bet McDonald Miller does, yeah. Man, they're a nuisance. They're supposed to look for arcs, but I think like my
Motor loads are really hard on.
yeah, like the vacuum,
Yeah.
fridge, garbage disposal.
Big mixers.
When you plug something in and it makes that little arc in the receptacle, that'll trip them.
Yeah,
Yeah.
super annoying. I found that too. I'm glad it's not just me. But according to the code, they've added new provisions requiring AFCI protection for guest rooms, guest suites of hotels and motels. All 120 volt single phase 15 and 20 amp branch circuits supplying outlets and devices installed in guest rooms and guest suites of hotels and motels shall be protected by any of the means described in 210.12. Everything needs to be an arc fault. They don't want people dying in hotel rooms.
Don't plug it in your coffee maker.
Plug it in your coffee maker. Now you get to go out and look at it and reset it. Yep. Electric vehicle branch circuit. Oh, deletion and relocation.
Yeah.
Throwing us a curveball here.
New article.
So they relocated the requirement for an individual branch circuit for electrical vehicle outlets. They removed it from 210.17 and put it in 625.40. An outlet. So it says each outlet installed for the purpose of charging electric vehicles shall be supplied by a separate individual branch circuit. This circuit shall have no other outlets. Does anybody have an electric vehicle charging station in their house? Yeah, me either.
Got a golf cart.
That's an electric vehicle charging station. Is it on its own dedicated circuit? Of course.
No. It's on my outdoor outlets.
It's on your Christmas light circuit.
There's a 20 amp feed outside the one there.
Dwelling unit receptacle outlets. So this applies to your house. Revision, fixed cabinets that do not have countertops or similar work surfaces was added as an item that will constitute a break in wall space for receptacle spacing requirements at dwelling units. This section provides arrangements for 125 volt, 15 and 20 amp receptacle outlets. So it looks like, because if you've never gone through this, you're supposed to have an outlet every 6 feet, within 6 feet of each other. So the idea is you're not running extension cords along paths of travel, or you shouldn't have to run extension cords. And so now what they're saying is this here counts as a wall space. So you wouldn't have to like put an outlet up here. They're saying that this is, I guess it's just wall space now. Oh, so you would. That's what it is.
It's the next one.
So this isn't wall
behind,
space.
it's behind the TV.
Yep. Used to be you could constitute that as a wall space. Now you can't. So it increases the number of outlets that you need. Because you'd put a TV up there. That makes sense. So fixed cabinets that do not have countertops or similar work surfaces was added. Dwelling unit receptacle outlets. Revision. An individual branch circuit supplying a receptacle outlet for any specific appliance, not just the refrigerator, at a dwelling unit is allowed to be rated 15 amps or greater. So what they're saying is you have to, whenever you do a kitchen, you have to have two 20 amp circuits. They're considered small appliance circuits, but you can have individual 15 amp circuits in addition to those. So like for your like a dishwasher, a garbage disposal. So you're allowed to, you can run more of that. And so what was the change here? Receptacle outlets changed in the kitchen, pantry, breakfast room, dining room, or other similar area of a dwelling unit. 2 or more 20 amp small appliance branch circuits required by 210.11 shall serve all wall and floor receptacle outlets covered by 210.52. Countertop article outlets covered by 210.52 and receptacle outlets for refrigeration equipment. So it says there's an exception in addition to the required receptacles, switched receptacles supplied from a general purpose branch circuit. So you can have a switch circuit probably for your garbage disposal. That's what it sounds like. So they're giving some exceptions there so you don't have to do a bunch of dedicated for everything in your kitchen. What do we got here? So this is kind of refrigeration equipment generally required to be served by one of the 2 or more 20 amp small appliance branch circuits. Any questions on that? No? What we got here? Nobody texting in. Sounds like we're good. We good on the Skype? Anybody got any comments?
No, this is great information.
Thank you,
That
Travis.
really clarified the issues of circuits in a kitchen for me.
Thank you.
You're welcome, Ray. Jeff, we good?
Yeah, we're good. I had to quiet him down before I responded.
Eric? Okay. Dwelling unit receptacle outlets. Revision. The measurement point for peninsular countertops has been changed from the connecting edge to the connecting perpendicular wall. I think what this, if we look at this, this is what they're talking about. So they're clarifying that you can have an outlet over here against the wall, and that will serve this peninsula. Because where else would you put an outlet? You'd have to like drill it in and have it like surface mounted, like into the countertop, because there's no wall there.
And the peninsula.
Into the peninsula, yeah. So they're saying now there's clarification, you need at least one receptacle outlet to be installed at each peninsula countertop with a long dimension of 24 inches or greater. So if you're gonna do a peninsula, make sure you have an outlet down here at the perpendicular wall, as they call it. And you should probably have one at the end on the face down here would probably be a good idea. Dwelling unit receptacle outlets. Revision. Receptacle requirements for dwelling unit garages, basements, and accessory buildings expanded to 2-family dwellings, not just one. So now they're kind of roping in more of those dwellings instead of just the one. They've changed the code language. It provides requirements for 125 volt, 15 and 20 amp receptacle outlets. So now they're saying for basements, garages, and accessory buildings, for 1- and 2-family dwellings, at least one receptacle outlet shall be installed in the area specified. These receptacles shall be in addition to those receptacles required for specific equipment. So that, looking at the picture, they've basically added that this can now be a 2-family dwelling unit instead of just a one. And you need at least one receptacle down here in a basement. You need something out here in the detached garage. And you need something. What's that?
Looks like an outhouse.
Looks like an outhouse. So if you're going to be putting buildings out there, you should have an outlet. Keep you from running extension cords.
Sounds like.
All right, we're moving into wiring and protection articles 210.50. Dwelling unit receptacle outlets. Revision. At least one receptacle outlet is required to be installed in each vehicle bay, and not more than 5.5 feet above the garage floor in the dwelling units. So if you have a 3-car garage, you need to have at least 3 outlets in there, one for each bay that you have, or if you're lucky enough to have a bigger shop. Looks like the only change was that they added
Do those need to be dedicated circuits, or can all 3 outlets be on one?
on one, but it needs to be 20 amp.
Unless it's for a car.
Unless it's for a car charging station.
Yeah, Ray has an electric car.
Yes, yeah.
I think Ray's gonna get an electric car. One of the little smart cars.
Must be just like one car garage.
Looks like all they did here was they added the 1- and 2-family dwelling, and they also added that 5.5 feet above the floor down there. So they have to be somewhat accessible. And if you need to paint a picture, Ray, hopefully this clarifies things for you a little bit. You can see there how we have at least one receptacle per bay, and it needs to be at least 5.5 feet from the bottom of the floor.
Is that for like a garage door? Is that to accommodate garage door openers?
No more.
I think it's just so you have power by your car.
No, it's garage door. That's how you plug into the ceiling though.
Oh, for your garage door opener, okay.
Yeah.
Very good. I like that. Garage door opener.
Modern convenience.
Yeah.
Not more than 5.5 feet above the floor.
Oh, yeah. Not more than 5.5 feet above the floor, though.
Where's the most
So that
optimal
can't be a
spot to
garage
put
door
your
opener.
retractable extension cord necessary?
Say that again?
Where's your most optimum spot to put your retractable extension cord?
Yeah.
Middle bay, it'll reach everywhere.
All 3.
Yeah, I'm going to say you put one here, and one here.
Put one outside by the garage doors so you can pull it out and hook it up if you're using something outside.
I'd put maybe one here that's 150 feet, so you can go out to your accessory building.
14
So,
gauge.
the wall outlets are the ones that are talking
I
about
think the
in that diagram.
receptacle manufacturer
But
had a.
Those have to be,
Oh, so this is a bay, this is a bay, and this is a bay, and these are garage door, garage door, garage door.
above 18 inches and below 5.5 feet.
That makes sense.
Oh, no, the next question is the next slide. He went backwards.
3 garage door openers? Those
It's
are
25 or something. Okay, that's kind of, it's the next question.
All right. Any
I'm
questions?
kind of
for,
tuning out the
Eric?
garage door thing.
We good? All right. Revision, electrical service areas. There's a revision to electrical service areas. The required receptacle outlets, the electrical service equipment must be installed in accessible location within 25 feet of indoor electrical service equipment. So it looks like the code change, the language change was for that outlet, at least 125 volt single phase 15 or 20 amp rated receptacle outlet shall be installed in accessible location, 7.5 meters or 25 feet from the indoor electrical service equipment. The required receptacle outlet shall be located within the same room or area as the service equipment. So that's what they updated. Somebody must have was able to, within that space provided, they were putting outlets in the next room from the electrical equipment. So they've added some language so that the outlet's in the same room as that service equipment.
Same language that came up for service receptacles on the roof, that's why they changed it.
On the roof?
Yeah, it's the same
As
language.
contractors.
They went to 25 feet.
Yeah, that makes sense. Close. You're gonna have it. So it looks like the receptacle outlet will not be required to be installed in 1 and 2 family dwellings. So in a single family residence or a 2-family, you don't need that next to the panel. Because it's talking about next to the electrical service panel. So in a house, you don't need that, virtually you do. And they've added exception 2, where the service voltage is greater than 120 volts to ground, a receptacle outlet shall not be required for services dedicated to equipment covered in Articles 675 and 682. So you can go to those articles and find the exceptions. But in your house, it's not required. And there's a picture of what they're talking about there. So that obviously looks like more than a 1 or 2 family dwelling. They've got an outlet here so that you can have power to run a light or something, battery charger, whatever it is you're doing. There's been a revision to the lighting outlets that are required for all occupancies. So this is for everything. For attics and underfloor spaces, they've taken out containing equipment requiring service such as heating, air conditioning, or refrigeration equipment. And they've put in utility rooms and basements, at least one lighting outlet containing a switch or controlled by a wall switch shall be installed where these spaces are used for storage or contain equipment requiring services. So here we're thinking like maybe like an attic with a furnace in it, basements where you're going to store things or crawl spaces. So people aren't putting stuff in storage areas without any lighting. And with a way to control that lighting.
Well, come on.
Yeah. Part, but more so switches in the attics, and is
Get
it
out.
wired to have a switch?
Well, this says,
Yeah. Yeah.
this says,
Well, in a basement, or not a basement, but a crawl space.
Controlled by-
or-
it is-
Controlled by a wall switch.
well, or containing a switch.
String switch.
Oh, string switch.
Yeah, switch.
So a string switch would work, yeah.
A key or something.
So what you're seeing is,
Just, yeah, just
as long as there's some way to turn that light on or off.
specified string switch.
And here's a little diagram for you. So here you can see, you got some equipment down in the basement, and you got some lights. Makes sense. It's nice to be able to see what you're doing. I agree with that one.
I put an 8-foot fluorescent fixture in the crawl space of my house.
Even better. Even better. That's what make it comfortable.
That's right.
I agree with you.
Real
All right, meeting rooms. Receptacle outlet requirements were added for non-dwelling unit meeting rooms. Looks like they've, each meeting room of not more than 1,000 square feet in other than dwelling unit shall have an outlet for non-locking type 125 volt, 15 and 20 amp receptacles. Outlets shall be installed in accordance with 210.71 where a room or space is provided with movable partitions. Each room shall be determined with the partition in the position that results in the smallest size meeting room. So, looks like each meeting room of not more than 1,000 feet. So, if you're under 1,000 feet, 1,000 square feet, then you need to have at least a 125 volt, 15 or 20 amp receptacle. Somebody must have been trying to get away with making small meeting rooms without outlets in them, calling them meeting rooms. Now they're saying if you're gonna have a meeting room, you gotta have power to it. So.
Yeah, they don't want you running cords underneath the partition walls to run an overhead projector or something
Yep.
like that.
That makes perfect sense. More power is better. What else? The total number of receptacle outlets, including floor outlets and receptacle outlets and fixed furniture, shall not be less than as determined in 1 and 2. Let's see, we got a picture. Ah, there's your meeting room, in case you were wondering. If a meeting room is at least 12 feet wide, it has a floor area that is at least 215 square feet, it shall have at least one receptacle outlet located in the floor at a distance of not less than 6 feet from any fixed wall for each 215 feet square or major portion of the floor space. Okay. Any questions on the meeting room receptacle requirements? Good to go? Okay. Clearances. We have a new code for clearances. New vertical clearance of 24.5 feet was added for overhead service conductors installed over railroad tracks. Does anybody have any railroad tracks running power over?
So no extension cords over
Or
railroad
do you
tracks?
jump over the
All there.
Under. Always go under your railroad tracks, Jimmy.
Yeah.
I gotta mute.
Yeah.
I had to mute Jeff.
Zone 2.
Another noisy over there. Anybody ever run power wires over a railroad track? No? Well, if you do,
There's the code for it.
24.5 feet is your code. If you're still unclear, there's a picture. There's a picture. It's invaluable right there.
Extension cord to tell them. We need a GFI.
Well, I'm sure you do. I imagine.
Everything else gets them.
Branch circuit receptacle requirements. New requirement added for bonding of metal overhead service support structures over buildings. So it looks like they've added for a grounded system where the substantial structure is metal. It shall be bonded by means of a bonding jumper and listed connector to the grounded overhead service conductor. So a metal building, you need to bond everything together. Bonding jumper size per 250.102 based on the size of the ungrounded service conductors. So make sure that you're adding bonding jumpers if you're running power to an electric or a metal building.
Metal structure on over building.
Yeah, exactly.
No, he's not.
Any questions on that?
Grounded systems.
Do we want to reread that, the last one? Make sure that we're, for grounded systems where the substantial structure is metal, it shall be bonded by means of a bonding jumper and listed connector to the grounded overhead service conductor. Okay? All right. metal pole buildings, stuff like that. We've got a new code for grounding electrodes. In-ground swimming pool structures are not permitted to be used as grounding electrodes. That makes me feel better. Looks like it looks like that's probably been a code, but what they added was now you can't, the structure and structure reinforcing steel, you can't use that as a grounding electrode. So the rebar that's in the concrete of the swimming pool, that can't be your grounding electrode anymore. That makes sense.
Yeah, swimming pool?
Yeah.
Okay.
You putting in a pool?
No, I did see, I did that in my shop though, it's called a U. Is it a U?
You for ground.
10-piece all, 10-foot piece all, for the paint green before they pour it.
Oh, as your grounding.
Grounds
Yeah.
this,
We got a picture.
Yeah, it said you can't use gas piping, but can you still use water pipe as a ground?
I don't see why not. Why wouldn't you?
If it's specs.
If it's PEX. Structures and structural reinforcing steel of an in-ground swimming pool as described are prohibited from being used as a grounding electrode. So, I think you're best served to just stay away from grounding to your swimming pool. That's what it sounds like to me. Right on time. Continuity and attachment of equipment grounding conductors to boxes. So here we're talking about junction boxes. Revision to clarify that all equipment grounding conductors associated with any and all circuits in the box must be connected together and to the box, not just equipment grounding conductors of each associated circuit. If the circuit conductors are spliced within a box or terminated on equipment within or supported by a box, all equipment grounding conductors associated with any of those circuit connectors shall be connected within the box or to the box with devices suitable for the use in accordance with 250.8. We got a picture, just in case. So if you're running circuits with a metal box, you need to be bonding to that metal box in addition to running a jumper over to that outlet and then feeding through to the next one. So make sure that you're grounding everything within those metal boxes. Any questions on this? Is there anything else you guys wanted to go back over before we move ahead?
To the next chapter or to the next?
So what we're gonna do, that ends the first 4 hours. I need the trainees to, when they're done with their test, to pass it to the person on their left for grading. Same with the Skype, if you guys have any.
You must have missed the test.
Joe, do you have trainee hours?
I need to take a test, yeah.
Oh. You might wanna.
Challenge, yeah, I'll help you.
You got
You can say them out loud.
We should ask Todd. Maybe Todd will answer some questions.
I got it.
Make sure you're putting your, for trainees, make sure you put your name and your license number on the test. And then, Joe, you need to sign in too.
Are you grading this
Yeah, I
right
already
now?
signed it.
Yeah, so we're gonna take 10 minutes. Journeyman can leave, but come back because we're gonna do part 2.
Oh, I wouldn't want to miss that for the world.
You're gonna wanna be here for part 2.
Where's the sign-in sheet for part 2?
We'll get there when you come back. And actually, I do need you guys to sign out for part 1. So find that sign-in sheet that's out there somewhere.
Pass it around in part 2 or?
We will when we come back. There you
Follow
go.
directions really well.
Maybe this one. Okay, you gotta sign in, sign out. This is for trainees. So Justin,
It's not a sign-in sheet you got there, buddy. What is it?
did you grade it? Oh, you need answers.
I thought you were just gonna read them and then answer them.
We might. We might.
We're getting
Good.
good. Sound
Good.
sound.
Okay, trainees, did you pass your test to the person on your left?
Yeah, I'll just get
dream of free.
Well, not everybody left, so what do you want me to do? Huh? Daryl's gonna grade yours. Answer to number 1 is Article 100. Number 2 is 1,000 volts. 3 is Article 425. Next one is Article 90.3. Wait, did I skip 710? 710. Which article covers standalone systems? Article 710. The next one is 90.3. Next one is Article 100. What new code addresses electrical connection torque? 110.14. What article addresses ground fault circuit interruption for personal protection? That's 210.8. Minimum number of 20 amp garage receptacles, that's 1. 25 feet. How many lighting outlets? 1. Does the light outlet above in the above question need to have a switch? That's yes. Can a swimming pool be used as a grounding electrode? That is no. Okay. If they scored 80% or above, mark yes if they passed. And then I'll take those.
Where's the other sign?
Oh, you'll get it.
No, the one for the sign out.
Oh, it's up front. How'd you do?
All right.
What are you doing maintenance there?
I like it.
They got a lot of
I
stuff.
like it a lot.
They got more than that. So they do have, they got some gas pipes in there, air
That was a dedicated circuit to the two pumps.
Hey, Matt, did you get down to see
For a loop, I had to think about it all.
and then they just,
A week ago.
oh, wow.
Where's Travis at? Travis is in Bellevue. We're good. Here? Yeah.
Oh, code one, right?
Yeah, there's a camera up there that does this whole front. And then, so on their iPad, you could dial in if you wanted. You get the PowerPoint on most of your iPad screen, the whole thing, and you get a little window of me in the front. So you can see what's going on and you can hear. It's kind of cool. Okay, so we're presenting and we got that. Did everybody get a NEC Code Update Part 2 that wanted one? Well, you probably took a bunch of notes on that. I don't know what that was.
I had highlights.
Highlights. Anybody else want an NEC Part 2 PDF slideshow?
You gotta show Casey here.
Daryl, you're good?
I'm good.
Okay.
Absorbing it.
Soaking it in. I love it. I love it. All right. Everybody ready?
Please.
Once again, we have a NEC Code Update book up here if you want it. If anybody wants to thumb through while we're going. I don't want anybody to feel like they're missing out on something or not getting the full experience in this. We have it in 2 versions. Loose leaf with tabs and then hardbound. So try to accommodate everybody. Todd, you good?
I'm good.
What's that? You can follow along in Dropbox. If we got a QR code if you want to download it straight to your device, and there's that sheet floating around. Yep. We are high tech around here. All right. We're going to jump right into table 300.5. Footnotes A and B. It's good stuff. They had a new change to underground installations. Two new footnotes were added to table 300.5. allowing lesser depths for listed low voltage lighting system, pool, spa, and fountain lighting, where they are part of a listed low voltage lighting assembly. So it looks like for, if your minimum cover requirement, 0 to 1,000 volts, what they've added is a lesser depth shall be permitted where specified in the installation instructions of a listed low voltage lighting system. So if the instructions say that you can do it, you can do it. Because what they're concerned with here is on the low voltage stuff, you're not going to hurt anything if you hit it with a shovel, what it sounds like to me. So, like,
All those little lighting systems you get at Home Depot.
exactly.
Yeah.
Little low voltage transformer stuff. Exactly. So they've lowered that. A depth of 6 inches shall be permitted for pool, spa, and fountain lighting installed in non-metallic Raceway, limited to not more than 30 volts. So kind of gives you a little extra wiggle room there if you're putting in some landscape lighting or something for your pool or fountain. If you have a fountain at home, be kind of nice. Have it lit up, be able to see it at night. Here we have ampacities for conductors rated 0 to 2,000 volts. They've deleted and revised. Raceways or cables installed on rooftops are now required to be installed, what is that, 7/8 of an inch? That's a tough one to see on my screen. 7/8 of an inch above the rooftop to avoid a temperature adder of 33 degrees Celsius or 60 degrees. So if you're gonna run conduit across the roof, it needs to be installed 7/8 of an inch above the rooftop. Otherwise, you gotta add to the temperature rating. And as you should know, as you increase the temperature rating, you decrease the ampacity. So to avoid that penalty in your ampacity requirements, you need to raise it up a little bit. Can anybody guess why that is? Any guesses?
Sitting in a pool of water or rusting out?
Sitting on the hot roof.
Sitting on a hot roof. Someone's got a 07 around here.
Oh,
That too, yeah. All right. Type NM cable entering metal boxes. Everybody know what type NM cable is? Romex. So this is something that pertains to your house, most likely, since Romex is not allowed in buildings, at least to my knowledge. Romex isn't allowed in buildings, is it?
It is, less than 3 floors or less.
No. Small buildings.
Yeah.
Small buildings, okay. Conductors entering boxes. The outside sheath of NM or UF cable used with a metal box must now extend not less than 1/4 of an inch inside the box as currently required for non-metallic boxes. So if you're gonna run Romex inside of a metal box, you gotta have a little bit of sheathing in there. Can't just drag it in with bare wires into a metal box. Sounds like a smart move. Listing requirements, armored cable type AC. They've, looks like there's a new code here, listing requirements. Cable type wiring methods and associated fittings are required to be listed. So this is on a manufacturer type end, more than it is your end. So now they need to list fittings as being required for use. Looks like the code change was type AC cable and associated fittings shall be listed. So now they're saying they're listed. Uses not permitted, flat conductor cable, type FCC. I've never worked with this stuff. Looks like it goes underneath the carpet tiles. You guys use this stuff at all? Have used it? There's a revision, type FCC cable will now be permitted in administrative office areas of hospitals and school buildings. It is not permitted outdoors or in wet areas. We're subject to corrosive vapors in any hazardous locations in residential schools or hospital buildings, in school and hospital buildings other than administrative offices. So that's what they added. Used to just say you couldn't have it in a school or a hospital. Now they're saying you can use it in the administrative areas of a hospital and a school. Run that stuff right underneath the carpet. It sounds like it'd be pretty easy. No, it's a pain in the ass. Well, maybe it's not that easy. Yeah.
Solves.
Use is permitted for type TC cable. Type of change is a revision, and it's new. Type TC-ER cable with designation JP will now be allowed to be installed without a raceway in dwelling units. So type TC-ER cable, it contains both power and control conductors. So it's a jacketed cable, and it's identified for pulling through structural members, and now you can use it in 1 and 2 family dwellings. So that might be good for remote, like central vacuum systems. What else would you use that for?
CCTV.
CCTO, for security cameras. Okay.
Sounds like Siamese cable, I think.
Oh, there you go, Siamese cable. Well, now you can use it in 1 and 2 family dwellings. So that's pretty neat. Trimming of LFMC. All cut ends of liquid tight flexible metal conduit shall be trimmed inside and outside to remove rough edges. Seems like that would have been a code before, but it says it's new. Cut ends of LFMC shall be trimmed inside and outside to remove rough edges. This requirement will provide consistency between Article 350 and Article 356. So if you're working with liquid tight metal conduit, trim the ends up. Any questions on that?
Is that a change code?
It's a new code.
That doesn't make a whole lot of sense, because the fittings have the collars on them that go over the rough end and makes it smooth, so.
You don't want to hurt the collar though.
That's right.
Easily go on.
Yeah, I agree. Anything else? Okay. Controlled receptacle marking. All non-locking type 125 volt, 15 and 20 amp receptacles controlled by an automatic control device shall be marked with the controlled receptacle marking symbol. So it's got its own symbol now for controlled receptacle. This is a revision. Receptacles that are controlled by an automatic control device must be permanently marked with the symbol shown in figure 406.3, and the word controlled. Required marking must be on the receptacle face, not the cover plate. Oh. Yeah. So that's new. Anybody ever seen one of those? No? Well, now you know what it means if you see one of those. And it has to be visible after installation. So that makes sense.
Is that like the clapper?
Probably be that these lead buildings probably have stuff like that.
Like a clapper?
Yeah, exactly.
I like it. Receptacle, replacement receptacles. Oh, arc fault. Looks like we have a new change here for general installation requirements. 2 new exceptions were added for AFCI requirements for replacement of existing receptacles. Looks like we got receptacle outlet shall be located in branch circuits in accordance with Part 3 of Article 210. General installation requirements shall be in accordance with 406.4. Our replacements receptacles shall comply with 406.4 through D6. Arc fault current interrupter type and ground fault circuit interrupter type receptacles shall be installed and radially accessible. So what they've added, there's an exception. It shall not apply to replacement receptacles. So if it's located in an area that is specified in 210, a replacement receptacle at this outlet must be AFCI protected. Not real sure on that one. Looks like I don't know. Any ideas on that?
Well, what they're showing in that picture is a 2-wire.
Oh, so if you don't have a ground.
Would have to be a GFCI receptacle still.
Because an arc fault needs a ground.
Yeah, and that arc fault wouldn't work there. So.
Okay, so there we go. So if you have a 2-wire, you don't have to put an AFCI in there. You can get by with a GFCI.
the rocking chair supposed to denote in that picture that it's old?
It's for reference, so you understand how big the receptacle is.
Oh, okay. That makes sense.
It provides a depth,
Okay.
you know, so you're not confused.
All right.
Yeah.
Good answer, Seth.
You're welcome. Okay. Oh, this is a big one. If you're replacing receptacles in and around your house now, they want everything to be tamper resistant. So now they're saying tamper resistant receptacles are required for replacement receptacles except where a non-grounding receptacle is replaced with another non-grounding receptacle. So if you replace a two hole with a 2 hole, it doesn't have to be tamper resistant. But if you replace a 3 hole with a 3 hole or a 2 hole with a 3 hole, it has to be tamper resistant.
So any outlet you replace nowadays, you gotta use a tamper-resistant ones, because kids don't have common sense or something, or what?
Except where a non-grounding receptacle is replaced with another non-grounding receptacle.
It's hard to find a non-TR receptacle.
Well, how are kids gonna learn about electricity?
It's a good question, Scott. I don't know.
Ask the homeless guy that's in the house. The gym boss.
He's looking kind of rough, isn't he? Tamper-resistant receptacles continued. We have a revision new. Requirements for tamper-resistant receptacles were expanded to mobile homes, preschools, and elementary education facilities, as well as other locations where small children are likely to congregate. TR receptacles were expanded to 250 volt receptacles as well as 125 volt receptacles. So now anything 250 volts below where children may congregate needs to be tamper resistant. Keep them from pushing keys and paper clips into there. Has anybody not seen the tamper resistant receptacles? They work pretty good. They're kind of a pain to even plug in sometimes. But yeah, I would imagine that they'd save some kids, so not a bad idea.
Little Hyman on them.
You gotta break it. Okay. GFCI protection for appliances. GFCI requirements from 210.8 through Article 422 are related to personnel hazards from specific equipment, contact with equipment with excessive leakage current, and provide those requirements in a single location to Article 422. Looks like they've, what did they add here? Appliances identified in 422.5, which are 250 volts or less and 60 amps or less, single or three-phase, shall be provided with GFCI protection for personnel. Multiple GFCI protection devices shall be permitted but not required. So if you have things that look like that, so like our pressure washers, electric pressure washers, vending machines, looks like car wash vacuums. So what they kind of call out there too is like our pressure washers. Now ours are a little better than that, but we have a GFI protection on the end of the cord, but then a lot of times your outlets have GI protection. They're saying that's okay, but it's not required. It can be one or the other. So they're just expanding that. And there's a B, so the type, GFI shall be readily accessible, listed and located in one or more of the following locations. Within the branch circuit over protection device, so it could be built into the breaker. Device or outlet within the supply circuit, so outlet, like it said. An integral part of the attachment plug, so that's your whip. Within the supply cord, not more than 12 inches from the attachment plug. So like the ones that we have, the plug-in inline, you've all seen those. Or within the supply cord, oh, that was what I just said. Factory installed within the appliance. So it can be built into the appliance too. So GFIs are just continuing to add more and more requirements for them. Makes sense. Anybody ever been saved by a GFI? I know I have. Yeah. Had it been somewhere wet and had it pop, where you might have gotten shocked. Built-in dishwashers. This was something I just went through. So now, if you're putting in a dishwasher, they've increased the length of the cord. So most dishwashers have a plug-in on them, like like a whip. You plug it in. they've increased the length of the cord from 4 feet to 6.5 feet. But they've also increased the requirement, so now you can't have a plug-in right behind the dishwasher. It has to be in the next bay over.
Readily accessible.
Yeah, for leaks.
Don't want it in a wet condition or?
Yeah,
Readily accessible.
and accessible, yeah.
It's okay if they're hardwired though, right behind there. Right?
I think most of them come with a cord. They don't,
I don't think all of them are hard. Well, I guess all the ones connect.
Well, back before they had the cords, you'd wire them up right underneath in the front, hardwire them into a little box.
Hmm.
That's old school.
Yeah, I guess so. I guess now they're, most of them come with a whip. And they need to be, plugged into the next bay over. So keep that in mind if you're gonna replace a dishwasher and have it inspected.
That's your disconnecting means, that's the reason why they want it
Oh,
where it is.
that's your disconnecting means, yeah. Okay, that makes sense. What else they add here? For trash compactor, the length of the cord shall be 3 to 4 feet, measured from the face of the attachment plug to the plane of the rear of the appliance. For a built-in dishwasher, the length of the cord shall be 3 to 6.5 feet, 6.5 measured from the face of the attachment plug to the plane of the rear of the appliance. Receptacle for a built-in dishwasher shall be located in a space adjacent to the space occupied by the dishwasher. Receptacle shall be accessible. So, makes sense.
I was just asking Bill, when was the last time you saw a trash compactor?
I don't have one.
Should be a simplex receptacle too, single device.
Oh, that's good advice. Single device receptacle. Yeah, because why would you need two?
Yeah.
Makes sense. Good call. Heating cables under floor coverings. I think it's getting slower. All right. So there's a new requirement added in Part 5 of Article 424 giving specific instruction for the installation of heating cables installed under floor coverings. There's identification. Heating cables for installation under floor coverings shall be identified as suitable for being installed under a floor covering. Expansion joints. Heating cables shall not be installed where they bridge expansion joints, unless provided with expansion and contraction fittings applicable to the manufacturer of the cable. Connection to conductors. Heating cables shall be connected to branch circuit and supply wiring by wiring methods described in the installation instructions or as recognized in Chapter 3. Anchoring. Heating cables shall be positioned or secured and placed under the floor covering per the manufacturer's instructions. Ground fault circuit protection, ground fault circuit interrupter protection for personnel shall be provided. And grounding means such as copper braid, metal sheath, or other approved means shall be provided as part of the heated link. Anybody ever put these under carpet? Or under, yeah, under floor covering, so tile? Yeah, I did one of those once. It was really nice. It's warm on the toes. Yeah. All right, single motor taps on one branch circuit. There's a new type of a code change here. New tap rule for single motor allows 24 or 7.5 meters or 25 foot taps with the same conditions as allowed in other areas of the NEC. Several motor loads or loads on one branch circuit. So they've increased the maximum length of the conductors of any one tap. So now you have a little bit more leeway if you're putting motors on circuits. Grounding and bonding, air conditioning and refrigeration equipment. This is a new code. There's a new requirement was added requiring a wire type equipment grounding conductor for non-threaded equipment systems on rooftops supplying such things as HVAC equipment. Where multi-conductor and combination load equipment is installed outdoors on a roof, an equipment grounding conductor for the type For the wire type shall be installed in outdoor portions of metallic raceway systems that use non-threaded fittings. It's like EMT, is what it sounds like to me. EMT has a tendency to pull apart because it's just that set screw. And if you're using that as the grounding means, you can pull apart, now you don't have a ground anymore. So they've said if it's non-threaded, you need to run a grounding conductor in there now. All right, protection devices for room AC units, window shakers. Single-phase cord and plug connected room air conditioners shall be provided with one of the following factory installed devices. One, leakage current detection interrupter. That's a new one to me. LCDI. Or an arc fault circuit interrupter. Or a heat detecting circuit interrupter. Anybody ever heard of those ones? Well, now you got to have them on a window shaker. So if it's starting to overload, there's some way for it to cut off. Shall be an integral part of the attachment plug or be located in the power supply cord within 12 inches of the attachment plug.
They should be factory installed.
Up in the top there.
Yeah, factory installed. So be looking for those. Ground fault circuit interrupt protection for receptacles on 15 kW or smaller portable generators. Here's your house generators, RV generators. They're now required to have, it says listed cord sets incorporating GFCI protection for portable generators manufactured or rebuilt prior to January 1st, 2015 are now permitted. GFCI requirements have been separated into unbonded floating neutral generators versus bonding neutral generators. So after January 1st, 2015, receptacle outlets that are part of the 15 kW or smaller need to have listed GFCI for personnel integral to the generator or the receptacle. Once again, more and more of that a GFI because it saves lives. Article 100, definitions. 14 definitions that resided at 500.2 in previous editions of the code have been relocated to Article 100. We talked about this in the last part where they've consolidated a lot of these articles. They've relocated those ones you see there. These relocated hazards, which are classified. Location definitions will include the phrase as applied to hazardous classified locations at each of these Article 100 definitions. So if you go looking for those around 500.2, they're now in Article 100. Cable seals, Class 1, Division 1. Seals for cables entering enclosures shall be installed within 18 inches of the enclosure or as required by the enclosure marking. Only explosion-proof unions, couplings, reducers, elbows, and capped elbows that are not larger than the trade size of the enclosure entry are permitted between the sealing, fitting, and the enclosure. Any questions? So we've added some definitions for healthcare facilities. There's a new definition here for governing body that's been added to Article 517. Governing body is the person or persons who have the overall legal responsibility for the operation of a healthcare facility. Maybe a operations manager or a president of the hospital. They're now considered the governing body. So there must be some rules that apply to the governing body of the healthcare facility to make some decisions or be responsible for operations of that hospital. More on healthcare facilities. There's been a revision There's a definition of healthcare facility was revised to include mobile enclosures. Been seeing more and more of these around town. Those portable CAT scan ones, and there's all sorts of different ones out there that live in those buses, in addition to like the Bloodmobile that comes here every 6 weeks. So that would now be a healthcare facility, falls under their rules.
Those aren't the same ones down by the gas station, are they?
Down here, yeah, those are. I'm sure there's needles in
I was
them.
gonna say, the exchange program.
Yeah,
Yeah.
Discounted prescription medicine.
discounted, yeah.
You have a green card, you
No prescription weeds.
Buildings, portions of buildings, or mobile enclosures in which human medical, dental, psychiatric, nursing, obstetrical, or surgical care are provided. That's pretty encompassing. So now those are going to fall under certain requirements for healthcare. Oh, this is a good one here. You guys just wait. You ready?
Anticipation is.
You ready?
What?
You ready? We got carnies. All right, carnivals, GFI protection. Carnivals, cruises, fairs, and similar fun events. What type of change? What?
What happened to your speed?
Yeah, I don't know.
There's lots of speed at the carny.
Yeah, I got speed. New requirements for listed, labeled, and identification of portable GFI protection for branch circuits fed by flexible cords. When GFI protection is required, GFI protection for personnel shall be provided for the following: all 125 volt single phase 15 and 20 amp non-locking type receptacles used for disassembly and reassembly are radially accessible to the general public. Equipment that is radially accessible to the general public and supplied from 125 volt single phase 15 and 20 amp branches. So if you have to be a carnival assembler during the summer, be on the lookout for GFIs. Those are now required. If you're looking for any side work. Is anybody in here a clown? No? Yeah, me either. Okay.
Not popular.
We're over halfway done.
With this section.
Everything, or part 2, or?
There's only 2 parts.
Oh.
We're on part 2. We're being slowed down by our Skype here. Receptacle outlets, mobile homes, manufactured homes, and mobile home parks. Type of change revision: GFI protection for mobile homes is revised to reflect GFI coverage for all sinks, dishwashers, and other locations similarly found in 210.8. More GFI requirements, especially in mobile homes. Dishwasher now requires GFI protection. No. I'm sure that'll be a nuisance. Arc fault circuit interrupter protection, so AFCI. Arc fault protection at mobile homes and manufactured homes was revised by eliminating the specific laundry list of rooms and areas. And now they simply require compliance with 210.12. Put an arc fault in. Pretty much looks like everywhere. Those are already death traps. Might as well try to make them a little bit safer. Type receptacles provided at RV parks. Oh, for you RVers out there. The type of receptacle required to be provided at RV parks was increased to 40% of all new sites for 50 amp rated receptacles. Yeah, it was reorganized into a list format for clarity. So as everybody's RVs are getting bigger and bigger, now they're saying 40% of your outlets need to be 50 amp receptacles.
See on a 20 amp.
Yeah. So that's good for everybody with a larger RV. Be able to have all the power you want.
It is nice to be able to run both your air conditioner.
I bet it is, Scott. I bet it is. And your heated floor.
No heated floor. Not that luxury.
Grounding, new revision, grounding at RV park pedestals, equipment, grounding electrode systems are not required to be established at RV pedestal equipment that is not considered a service. Anybody ever do any RV park work? No. GFI protection for personnel and temporary installations. GFI protection is permitted in the form of portable GFI cord sets in addition to GFI protection required for all 125 volt single phase 15 and 20 amp and 30 amp receptacles outlets that are not part of the permanent wiring of the building or structure. I'm not sure what the change was there. There's nothing highlighted. They're just saying you can use portables, is what it is. You can use those portable ones that we've had for years. So it was a clarification so that contractors don't have to install fixed GFI protection outlets. You can use the cord style. Freestanding office furnishings, cord and plug connected. For purposes, let's see what they do. Revision clarifies that 13 duplex receptacles are the maximum number of receptacles permitted in office furnishings. So cubicles, you can have 13 receptacles and no more. Doesn't that seem excessive? Yeah, thinking that too.
That way you can plug in on those 1,000-watt heaters.
Yeah.
So everyone can have that little wall heater plugged in, right?
Yeah, there's no heaters.
Yeah.
Yeah. Oh, this is something here. There's a new code. 2 new definitions were added: wireless power transfer and wireless power transfer equipment. Because these are coming where you just park your electric car over. Ray, keep this in mind. You just park your car over this little device and it charges.
Nice Countertops there.
Yeah.
Don't sit on it. It might be okay.
Charge your phone while you're sitting on it. Just
Yeah,
use
there
it.
you go.
Imagine if you put your Sonicare on that thing. How fast that'd charge.
Vibrate.
Be instant.
Charge lots of things.
So if you happen to, anybody mentions to you that they're putting in a PWT, now you know that's a wireless power transfer or a wireless power transfer equipment. Yep. Okay. We have a revision to Article 645.3, other articles. References to other articles and sections applying to wiring and cabling and plenums above an IT equipment room were converted into a list format. Other article and section references applying to wiring, cabling, and plenums above IT equipment rooms that have been reformatted into a list format with appropriate titles added at each code reference. Well, there's a list format now that has to do with plenum space above IT equipment. Supply circuits and interconnecting cables. This is more IT technologies. This is under raised floors. Most of you should be familiar with raised floors in data centers. Requirements for installing wiring methods and cables under a raised floor in an IT equipment room have been revised for clarity. Let's see here. Previous table 645 was deleted as it contained conflicting information about permitted cable types permitted under a raised floor and is no longer needed. Well, that doesn't help a whole lot, but you go to 645.5e, you'll find that they've revised some requirements for the cabling types. Surge protection is now required to be provided for critical operations data systems. So if you have critical operation data systems, probably for like a hospital, you need some kind of a surge protection so that they can't be taken out if there's a power surge or a lightning strike. You guys are installing any of that stuff? Not yet? Not yet. Surge arrestor, surge protection. Disconnecting means for X-ray equipment. Disconnecting means for industrial type X-ray equipment is required to be located within sight of the X-ray controls and radially accessible. That makes sense. If you had a runaway X-ray machine, you'd want to be able to turn it off. And
You're running low on X-ray oil.
yeah, you need some X-ray oil.
What is that, a strainer?
It does look like a sanitary Y or something. I don't know.
Just clean out real quick.
Surge protection for industrial machinery. New requirement was added for surge protection of industrial machinery with safety interlocking circuits. So if you have safety interlocking circuits on industrial machinery, now you need surge protection. That sounds like a good idea. So it doesn't blow out your interlocks and then provide unsafe working condition for industrial machinery. I like it. Equipment rooms and pits, swimming pools, fountains, and similar installations. We have a revision and a new
This is a GFI. You got a GFI.
A new requirement for protection against corrosive environment for electrical equipment installed in equipment rooms and pits was added at 680.12 and 680.14. I'm gonna guess that requirement has something to do with corrosion protection, maybe stainless steel, something like that. Or plastic.
Don't touch that.
Yeah, that's good advice. Don't touch that. That could be harmful. But yeah, at least it's GFI. Got that going for them. Lighting receptacles and equipment, swimming pools, fountains, and other similar installations. Requirements for the pool pump motor receptacle were revised with the single receptacle requirement removed and the minimum distance from the pool of 10 feet being reduced to 6 feet. So now, if you have a permanently installed pool water pump, it needs to be 6 feet from the inside walls of the pool. Receptacle must have GFI protection, and it can now be a duplex receptacle. Gives you a little bit more leeway there. We're getting into Scott's world here. If you want to get up and talk about this for 15 or 20 minutes, you're welcome to. You okay?
Yeah, you run with this.
Okay.
You're gonna see.
Gas-fired water heater, swimming pools, fountains, similar installations. New requirements were added for GFI protection for swimming pool and spa gas-fired water heaters. So if anybody out there, no names, Scott, wants to replace a pool heater in a condo building, now you have to hook it up to a GFI protected outlet. Makes sense. That is good to know. I agree. Okay. Bonding. Hydro massage tubs. These two go together. There's a new revision. Bonding requirements for hydro massage bathtubs were reformatted into a list format. A new exception was added to exempt bonding of small conductive surfaces. All metal fittings and all metal parts of electrical equipment that are in contact with the circulating water. All metal sheathed cables, raceways, piping. Well, they exempt, probably like, so apparently there was a requirement to bond all small metal surfaces within a shower enclosure. So maybe like a washcloth holder. Now they're saying that'd be kind of dumb to have to bond that. So they made an exemption for that. All right, fire pumps. This ought to get some blood flowing, huh? A little excitement. Something big. The revision clarified that ground fault protection of equipment is not permitted for fire pump power circuits.
You wonder why.
No shit. Jesus. Yeah, put it on everything, but something you rely on. Yep. At least they recognize that they're a nuisance, some of them.
They had a place burned down.
Yeah, I would imagine.
They want them to run no matter what.
Surge protection, fire pumps. A listed surge protection device, SPD, is now required to be installed on and/or on fire pump controllers. This seems to be a common theme, these surge protection devices. I don't know if they're becoming more accessible or they're better than they used to be, but it seems like they're popping up now all over the place. So if you're installing anything important, put a surge protection
Some
on
of my
it.
systems are operating off of generators, the reason why.
Generators are the reason. Okay. They tend to cause surges.
Right.
That makes
You
sense.
want conditioning power.
Yeah. Okay. Sounds like a good idea at your house maybe then too. If you have a generator.
Whole house. Surge protection.
Surge protection? Yeah. I like it. Any questions on that? Okay. Marking of boxes and enclosures for emergency circuits and systems. Identification for emergency circuits has been expanded to include cables, raceways not associated with boxes or enclosures. Emergency system receptacles now require identification with a distinctive color or marking. Seems like that's been around for a while. Marking things red or with labels, it's part of an emergency circuit. But now they're including cables and raceways that are not associated with boxes or enclosures. So they just kind of want everything red that has to do with an emergency circuit. Installation of Class 2, Class 3, and PLTC cables. This is under carpet communication wiring and cables. It is now permitted to be installed under modular flooring and planks as well as carpets. So this looks like some interesting stuff. Cat 5 maybe, some kind of communications cable. You can run it underneath your carpeting or your wood floors, your modular floors, snap together. Speaker wire, good call, I like it. Okay, any questions on PLTC cables? Nothing? Sure? It was the last slide. Okay. All right, so what I need from you guys, since we're done now, just over 6, that's pretty good. Figured 6 to 7, 6 or 7. For the journeyman, sign out. For the trainees, go ahead and pass your test to somebody next to you.
She didn't get it just
Oh, you didn't do your test?
Never got a test.
Jesus.
Yeah.
Uh-oh, better do it again.
Supposed to learn the first time. You got the first time, Joe.
Killing
First
me
question
over
of the
here.
test. Where is your test?
Everybody else hand their test over. Question 1, the answer is 6 millimeter or 1/4 inch. Number 2, trimmed. According to section 350.28, cut-ins of type LFMC shall be trimmed inside and out to remove rough edges. Question 3, tamper. Question 4, space adjacent. Question 5, wire type. Question 6, GFCI. Question 7, Joe, what'd you have?
Blue. Say blue.
Shade. Plead the fifth.
Surge protection. Question 8, 10, feet to 6 feet. Question 9, shall not be installed. And section 10, modular and planks. Okay? So once you get your test graded, circle passing yes or no. Bring them up to me. Trainees, you're going to need to sign out. And then same with journeyman. As soon as you sign out, you're welcome to go. Guys on the Skype, how we doing?
Okay, we gotta go 2 nights. Yeah. So 6 hours. I get to go. Yeah. Although the third kid, they do it online though, for free now.
Thanks, Seth, for the class. You have a good one.
You log on.
All right, Jeff. Send me your sheets.
I don't know.
I will. Do it right now.
For the second one. Where's that? Thank you, sir.